Hey, what is going on, guys? This is SMEB Reviews, and today we are taking a look at the new studio album from Young the Giant titled Mirror Master. Let's get to it. Mirror Master is a follow-up album from Young the Giant's 2016 album Home of the Strange, which was an incredible album and one of the best of 2016. It really showed their ability to make really good indie pop music that really worked well. It was a great album and I did really love it, so I was really highly anticipating this album when I heard that we had a new album coming from the band. And once the singles started to come in, I was getting a little apprehensive, honestly. They weren't too interesting, not to say that they were necessarily bad, but they just didn't really stand out, whereas Young the Giant is a band that always stood out even in their field of indie rock. They really did have a star quality about them. Their first album also was an incredible album. They have a lot of really good music in their back catalog, and these songs were just kind of mediocre, so I was a little apprehensive about the new album after hearing the singles. But now that the full album's been released, what did we get? Well, honestly, I feel like the singles were sort of showing the signs that this album would be fairly mediocre, and that is what we got. There's not really a lot interesting here. We get a lot of really mediocre and mundane songs that don't really step out of the boundaries of indie rock at all and don't really do anything interesting. Young the Giant created such simple and such amazing melodies and hooks that really stuck in your head in their past albums, and all of these are fairly just boring and really don't give the listener too much to really want to explore more. It's truly a very boring album. Not to say it's necessarily bad, but it just doesn't really step out of its boundary any. It sticks to one lane and kind of just sits there, and it does get very boring and monotonous throughout the whole album. A 12-track album that really comprises of hardly anything worth talking about. And unfortunately, we don't really start to pick up until the final 4 tracks. Tightrope is a really interesting song that has a lot of energy behind it, and You and I is a really sweet song, so we do get some really good songs near the end of the album, but unfortunately, they are only 1/3 of the track listing. If these 4 songs and their quality were represented throughout the whole album, things would be different, but unfortunately, it's the final 4 songs even. When you start the album, it's just 8 songs of incredibly boring and uninteresting music to finally get a small reward at the end, which really just does not make up for it. Home of the Strange was such an incredible album that really capitalized on the band's abilities, and this album just does not. Instrumentation's really not interesting, the production's very minimalistic, and there's just nothing really substantial in the lyrics either. It's not a bad album, I do have to emphasize that. It actually does slightly lean towards the good side of the spectrum, only because of those 4 songs, but even then, it's not a bad album. It's just so bland and uninteresting that I really could not care less about it, and that's the definition of a 5 out of 10, an album that it's very mediocre. It's not bad, it's not good, it's just right there. And yes, it does slightly lean into the good side, but honestly, this album just is such a disappointment. It's not bad, I have to emphasize that, because the band does have talent. The lead singer does have some good chops, and honestly, they still do have some pop sensibilities in this album, but it's just so watered down. And I can't even say that this is more of an approach for a more mainstream pop sound. It's not really that either. It just sounds like a completely uninspired album, and not to say that it was, it just doesn't have any real substance or interesting music or life in it. It just is not exciting like some of their past works are. As I said, Tightrope is a good song. It does have a lot of bounce to it. It's very funky, and I do really enjoy that song. Not to say it's the most intricate or advanced song that they've done, but it is a standout track after so many extremely boring songs. The 3 tracks before it are all very, very slow and stripped back, and this song at least pumps some life into an otherwise very lifeless album. And besides that, that's all I really have to say. It's not a bad album, it's really not, but it's so uninteresting, and we've seen Young the Giant pump out such good music. They are a staple for indie rock, and we've seen them be one of the forerunners of this genre, and now we just see a completely boring album from them, which is really unfortunate, and I was really excited for this album. but Mirror Master just really does not stand out. So, unfortunately, I'll give it a 6 out of 10. What did you guys think of this album? Please let me know down below. Besides that, is there anything I can do to improve the quality of my videos or any upcoming albums that you'd like me to check out? Check out my Twitter, it's in the description. Besides that, thank you guys so incredibly much, and I'll see you guys later.